So that's what's taken the VA so long. Hey, I am Chuck the Bureaucrat, and recently I've been combing through data about the VA's backlog. And you've probably heard me mention that more and more claims are taking longer than 125 days to process. But in this conversation, I've started to get some comments like, "Well, it's been 3 years and I haven't gotten my claim settled." Or, "Honey, I don't know what you're looking at, but my claim has been pending for years." That seems weird to me. Not wrong. I mean, there's always going to be somebody who gets sucked into a bureaucratic black hole, but it's starting to seem more and more common. So, okay, I'm going to head down the rabbit hole. Bottom line, this issue has to do with appeals. Appeals can be a nightmare. They are slow, and the process is very complicated. And for those of you who have not yet submitted your initial claim, take this as a warning. Do a good job the first time or be prepared to suffer the consequences. Now, in all fairness to the VA, it does seem that there have been some recent reforms that are improving things, and I'll talk about them as we go on. But for those of you who are already trapped in the appeals quagmire, wow. All right, before we get too far, let me explain something about the VA organizational structure and the organization of the appeals process. First, within the VA, there are 4 major offices. Veterans Benefits Administration handles things like the VA Home Loan Program, VGLI, education benefits, and compensation, both disability and pension. And just a quick reminder here, when I mention the VA pension, I'm not talking about a military retirement pension that's paid by the Department of Defense. They're entirely different programs, and if you're interested in learning more about the VA's pension program, watch this video. Next, you got the Veterans Health Administration, VHA. These guys run the clinics and other healthcare facilities, something like 53,000 licensed healthcare providers. The National Cemetery Administration, NCA, manages most, but not all, of the national cemeteries. For instance, like Arlington National Cemetery is administered by the Army. And then the Office of General Counsel provides legal support to the VA and manages the accreditation and discipline of VSOs, attorneys, and claim agents. And they have a role in controlling fees for claim assistance. Now, among these offices, the one that's going to generate the most appeals is going to be the Veterans Benefit Administration. That's just because they're the ones who are making decisions about who gets what. And I should point out that when I'm doing this quarterly review of the VA backlog, what we're really looking at is the VBA's backlog. Anyways, when a veteran receives a decision from one of these 4 offices and doesn't agree with the decision, they send their appeal to the Board of Veterans' Appeals. You'll often hear this referred to as the board. Now, the board is part of the VA, and for years it was the final decision authority on any appeal. But you can imagine how some people would have felt that that was really just a kangaroo court, and that the VA wasn't really interested in siding against itself in an appeal. So, in 1988, Congress established the U.S. Court of Appeals for Veterans Claims. People often call this the CAVC, or the court. This court takes appeals on decisions made by the Board of Veterans' Appeals. And so now veterans can take an issue outside of the VA. Now, I know what you're doing. You're like looking at the clock going, "Come on, Chuck, why are appeals taking so long?" Well, aside from the bureaucratic slog that this wire diagram suggests, there's really 2 things. First, U.S. Code, Title 38, Section 7107, says that each case will be decided in regular order according to its place on the docket. And while this might seem fair at first glance, remember, fair is just a 4-letter word that starts with F. And some of you ORSAs out there are already sensing how first come, first serve might be actually delaying the process. I mean, I would have expected that they would batch similar cases so they could move them through quickly. And granted, there is a mechanism that veterans can use to get pushed to the front of the line that's called advancement on the docket. But that just means there's a whole new layer of bureaucracy springing up while people compete for a better place in line that does nothing to actually move the process faster. The second problem is one of those, funny government words, remanded. In this situation, remanded means to return a case to a lower level for reconsideration. The board will remand a case back to the agency that made the original decision, or the court will remand a decision back to the board. They don't finish the appeal either for or against the veteran. They just send the work back where it came from. So you wait to get your initial decision. You make an appeal. You wait to get to the head of the docket. You get remanded back to the original agency. And then you wait some more. It's no wonder it takes years. So now let's take a look at the board's backlog. And here, for each year, there's 2 columns, one for the appeals decided and one for the appeals still pending. First, every year they seem to get about 100,000 cases decided. Second, they're not really keeping pace with incoming appeals. At the end of 2023, it looks like they'd have 2 years worth of work even if they didn't get a single new appeal. What's interesting, and maybe even important for us, are those green and blue segments. Because in 2017, there was a change to how the appeals were handled. This was called the Veterans Appeals Improvement and Modernization Act, or AMA for short. Since 2019, all new appeals have been managed under this new system, and they're colored blue. The so-called legacy appeals, in green, with their god-awful process, are slowly escaping from the system. Now, I'm not going to try to explain the legacy process because it'll make your eyes water, but if you're curious, the VA does have a very good web page about this. Instead, what I want to do is I want to focus on the new system. And for you ORSAs just chomping at the bit to optimize this, simmer down, because Congress took an interesting approach here. They gave veterans choices. It's no longer the one-size-fits-none program, and instead veterans can pick how they want to be processed. But you analysts, you don't get to optimize anything. So the process starts when you get your initial decision. Are you happy? Well, if you are, congratulations, you're done. And, by the way, that's what you want. You want to submit a fully developed claim so you can just be done. But if you don't agree with the initial decision, you get to pick from 3 options. You can just ask for a senior reviewer to look at your case. You don't even have to include new evidence, and allegedly, this higher-level review is one of the fastest ways to process an appeal. You can also just do a supplemental claim. You can add new evidence or point something out and then just send it back to a reviewer. You basically cut out the whole waiting game to get remanded back to the original agency for review. And then you can choose to go to the board. Just like in the previous options, you can go with a direct review. No new evidence, no hearing, but instead of a senior reviewer, your file gets reviewed by a judge. You can submit new evidence, although you got to do this pretty quickly, something like 90 days. Again, there's no hearing, but a judge reviews it. Or you can go all in with a hearing and a judge and the whole works. Now, as you might imagine, direct review tends to be faster, clocking in at 314 days to completion on average. And a full-blown hearing, well, that averages like 927 days, which is about 2.5 years. So I'm not sure that the whole process is any faster than it ever has been, but at least now veterans get to pick the process that they go through. And hopefully that can help avoid getting kicked around and having really long wait times. But, like I said, nothing seems to beat getting a first-time go on your initial claim. And a big key to that seems to be getting the right Veteran Support Officer, or VSO. So if you want to find out how to find a good one, watch this video, and if you're interested in a cautionary tale, watch this video.